Hey everybody, what's going on? Do you ever want to navigate the fretboard but in a way that sounds musical and interesting? Well, I've put together multiple licks to make one solo piece to help you do just that. Let's check it out. Alright, so let's go ahead and break down measures 2 and 3. I'm playing over an A minor 7th chord, and we're starting in the A minor pentatonic 2nd position. Okay, so the first idea here is blues bass, and it's very simple. We're targeting the E, which is the perfect 5th of A. I hit a D, which I full bend to an E. I use the A and C notes as lead-in tones. And I'm not just running a scale, but I'm aiming for chord tones, and I'm using the bends to make it sing. So a good thing to think about when soloing is don't think only about shapes, but think about targets within shapes, if that makes sense. In the next measure, I add a little bluesy color by touching E flat, which is the flat 5th. The E flat is just a chromatic blues inflection. Think of it as we're adding a little bit of color. We're not changing the framework. That E flat immediately resolves to C, which is the flat 3rd of A minor, and this is where the phrase settles. And this sets the tone for the solo. We have pentatonic first, blues inflection second, and from here we'll start moving around the fretboard. So let's check out measures 4 and 5. We're still playing over an A minor 7th chord, but now I'm expanding beyond pentatonic for a moment. I quickly descend through the A minor natural scale, Aeolian. I'm using this scale to create motion and momentum that leads into pentatonic language. As the line continues, the scale collapses back into the A minor pentatonic 1st position. So in measure 5, we resolve on D, which is the perfect 4th of A minor. And this gives the line an almost suspended bluesy-like feel instead of a hard resolution. So this shows how we can move between the natural minor scale and pentatonic without losing sound of the key. So let's check out measures 6 and 7. Here the rhythm changes to a D minor chord, but I'm still using the A minor pentatonic for the leads, specifically in the 1st position. And even though the lead scale stays the same, but the chord changes, so this is going to change the function of the notes. In measure 6, I start with a full bend from G to A, which is the 5th of D minor. And then I do a triplet that's followed by another full bend from D to E. And E is the major 2nd of D minor. So this is going to add a little bit of color without it sounding outside. And measure 7 is really just a continuation of the same idea, but ultimately I resolve on A. A acts as a dominant here, but mixed with a backing chord, this will actually stabilize the line. This definitely gives off a little bit of a bluesy sound. It's pretty simple, but we still need to make sure that we get our phrasing right, because that's when the emotion is really going to come to life. So let's go ahead and check out measures 8 and 9. We're still playing over a D minor chord, but this time we're going to focus on fretboard navigation. The goal here is to move across the neck, but in a way that's musical and smooth and not jumpy. I'm still using the A minor pentatonic, and I start in the 1st position, go through the 2nd, 3rd, and land in the 4th. It might sound a little tough just hearing it out, but if you're familiar with your pentatonic positions, this will be much easier to grasp, and you'll understand how all these are connected. At the start, I use a quick chromatic line, D, D sharp, and E. Notice how it sits between 2 diatonic notes. I don't highlight it or anything, it's just purely forward motion. I use hammer-on and slides to make the position shifts feel smooth. Like any fast run though, this line needs a destination, which is an A note that's full bent up from a G. And measure 9 is simple enough, it's just that held A. And this is where we let the line breathe. Remember, constant motion means nothing without some space. Now what's interesting here is that we're very much going through shapes, but we're doing it in a way that doesn't sound mechanical. Let's check out measures 10 and 11. So here we have another chord change, and now we're playing over a G minor. And up until this point, I've been showing how we can use one pentatonic and stretch it across some chords and measures. This is where we intentionally break away from the minor pentatonic boxes, even in the leads. Because of where we left off in the previous measure, it sets me up to be in perfect position to bust out an F Ionian lick. So now we're shifting frameworks. But remember, F Ionian is just a fretboard map, it's not the tonal center. A good thing to always remember is scale does not equal function. Even though I'm playing through an F major scale shape, every note is functioning in harmony with the G minor chord. Now, the G minor chord, of course, is non-diatonic to A minor, so where did it come from? This works because the G minor chord is the second chord in the F major family. So nothing's going to sound out of place even though we've actually left the A minor pentatonic language. Now, when you play the solo without any backing chords, you're going to hear the obvious change in scales. But it's the backing chords that make everything grounded, and when done correctly, everything just sounds as one. I briefly land on A, which is the major second of G, but this is mostly about speed and motion here. We're not thinking resolution right now. And at the end of measure 11, I add a little bit of chromaticism. I hit the notes C, C sharp, and D. The C sharp is non-diatonic to G minor, but it's just a chromatic passing tone. So this part resolves on D, which is the fifth of G minor. I love speed flutters like this because they're relatively simple in execution once you get it down, and they're easy to transpose to somewhere else on the neck and, make it a different key and such. So let's check out measure 12. Here, the harmony moves to C major over G, which is basically a C major chord with a fifth in the bass, and also C major is the relative major of A minor. And this is going to give us a slightly brighter color compared to what comes next. This section is intentionally simple and scalar. Now for the leads, I'm pulling from two modes of C major. First, I play a partial F Lydian, and then I move into G Mixolydian and do the same thing. F Lydian the fourth mode, and G Mixolydian the fifth mode. So they're going to sit naturally over this chord. And I just play the first 6 notes of each scale in linear fashion. There's no string skipping, there's no pattern breaks, it's all just straight connected motion. And there's a reason why I chose to go this route. Now if you don't know any modes, this is great because I'm giving you modal patterns that you can practice, and it's within a musical piece, so it's not going to feel like an exercise. But if you do know your modes, you might not know them as well as you think you do. So this section just really helps to reinforce the modal patterns at its most basic form, really, just into your mind. And I speak from experience too. It's always good to learn vocabulary and licks within scales, Those always seem like more fun than going through a straight scale. But remember, foundation is the start of the build. This line may be simple, but it's going to help you so much more than you know. This line also sets up to what's going to follow, which is a bit more technically demanding, I think. Think of it as we're just laying the groundwork before the next idea takes off. So basically you can think of this section as the goal being fretboard memorization and modal knowledge. Now let's check out measures 13 through 15. We're still playing over the C major / G chord, but now I'm shifting the lead language again. The framework is A minor pentatonic, but now I'm adding one note that's missing, and that's the B, which is normally omitted from the A minor pentatonic. Now you can think of pentatonic as home base here, but the B is just going to add a little color. You can think of it as expanding pentatonic language without abandoning it. Now this B is going to give us some bright diatonic tension without sounding too predictable. Now the run itself is a descending and ascending looping pentatonic pattern. Now I hit it a little fast, so the real challenge is going to be making it flow naturally. I start this run with economy picking to make it smooth, and toward the end of measure 13 I add alternate picking to give it more attack. And in measure 14 I go right back into economy picking. I briefly highlight B and C. I use a half bend on B to touch C, and then I bring it back down. In measure 15 I resolve the entire line on C. And I usually don't like resolving on roots, but I let it slide this time because the next section is really spicy. Let's go ahead and check out measures 16 and 17. Now this section has some outside flavor, but is very intentional. The harmony moves to a B7 chord, which is non-diatonic to A minor, but it's a secondary dominant, and I resolve it directly back to A minor. Now in minor keys, dominant chords often don't create enough tension. That's why dominant sevenths are just so effective. They contain a tritone, and this just demands resolution. Now over this B7 chord, I hit a C minor major 7th arpeggio, and this comes from the C minor melodic scale. So this is actually going to reinforce the dominant tension. The B note is going to act as a common anchor. The E flat is actually going to reinforce the major third of B7 because inharmonically it's D sharp. And the remaining notes are going to create upper tension that wants to collapse into A minor. So instead of finding the harmony, this C minor major 7th arpeggio actually wants to pull us back into A minor. Now if you've ever done major and minor sweeps, this kind of arpeggio will feel like you're speaking a completely different language because you pretty much are. But it's a lot of fun when you start getting it down. Sweep picking works best for the arpeggios. Just think, smooth motion and go slow, and then you can build up your speed from there. In measure 18, the harmony resolves to A minor and the lead resolves on A. Now, that single note is going to release all the tension that we've been building so far. Yeah, just review this piece and check out how everything all came together, how I use the A minor pentatonic and the blues language and the modal language, the speed flutters, the arpeggios. I hope these tricks can help you out on your musical journey. And a lot of this stuff is just patterns and shapes, so if you just memorize a line, it's easy to transpose to a different key. Alright, well that's a wrap. Thank you so much for making it this far into the video. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more guitar licks combined with music theory, I encourage you to check out the rest of the channel, and also please subscribe. You can also check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description. There, members can get access to every audio file, backing track, downloadable PDF file, and there's even quizzes and Bible study stuff on there to every lesson that I do. Not every lesson is locked. I do have some free stuff, so if you're thinking about joining, I encourage you to check out the free stuff to see if you like it. I also have some exclusive engagement on my Patreon that I don't do here on YouTube. You can also feel free to send me a DM on Instagram. My link is in the description. We can set up a one-on-one. It's free. Just think of it like a 30-minute consultation. And if everything works out, I can set you up with specialized guitar lessons that are just for you. Thank you for watching. God bless you. I'll see you in the next one. This reminds me of Romans chapter 12, verse 2. For the scripture says, "And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." For a long time, I was conformed, not just in life, but even on the guitar, playing the same patterns, staying inside the same shapes, never stepping outside what felt safe. But transformation starts in the mind. Paul doesn't say abandon everything. He says renew your mind, and that's powerful. Because renewing your mind doesn't mean you throw away the foundation. It means you grow beyond it. Spiritually, we're not called to stay trapped in old ways of thinking. We're called to mature, to expand, to understand deeper truths. And musically, it's the same idea. The pentatonic box isn't bad, it's a foundation. But if you stay conformed to it, if you never explore outside of it, you limit what's possible. When you step beyond the box, add modal color, introduce tension, and return home intentionally, that's transformation, not chaos. It's growth. So renew your mind and renew your playing. If you have God already, that's great. But if not, I encourage you to submit your life to Jesus Christ. And I promise you, he'll set your path straight. Jesus shed his divine blood so we could be saved. I encourage you to use your musical gifts and talents to praise Jesus Christ.